Welcome to Peer Innovation, the podcast with Leo Batari and me, Randy Cantrell. Building on our previous shows, The Year of the Peer and What Anyone Can Do, we turn our attention to helping business leaders build high-performing teams. We'll talk with a diverse group of thought leaders who will share stories and insights that will help you and your teams achieve new heights. If you believe there is strength in numbers and that meeting the challenges of the future can only be achieved if we do it together, then join us for the conversation.
Randy Cantrell. Here I am in Cincinnati, Ohio. Just finished actually a Vistage group meeting here. I'm actually have another one tomorrow before heading back to California. But it's kind of interesting traveling around the country, just seeing kind of what's going on and what's on people's minds and how different it is from one state to another and one municipality when you're seeing how they're dealing with COVID. Is it masks, no masks, what that's looking like. But yeah, pretty amazing stuff. So how are things, what's it look like in Texas right now as far as people masking up or not, or what's that?
Well, in the Republic of Texas,
yes,
where we kind of do our own thing. Yeah, the mask at the height of it, I would say really well, high compliance. I'll put it that way. But honestly, that did not last terribly long. I think we've had people. Clearly, we've had people that never did. Even out of courtesy, didn't. But now, probably more rare to see people wearing masks than not. I'm curious for you traveling, and now that you've been traveling, has travel changed from the time that it reopened? What are the changes in airline travel from the first time you got on a plane when this all ended to, say, your most recent trip? Has anything changed?
So two things. One is when I went to the airport to fly out Tuesday morning after the Monday holiday, I've never seen so many people in an airport in a long time. So the traveler count was up for sure in a major way, and that was really kind of interesting to say, to see. It really kind of took me aback a little bit. As opposed to getting handed a plastic bag with a tiny bottle of water and a bag of pretzels and a wipe of some sort to get you across the country was pretty much how that was supposed to last you. They actually have reinstated non-alcoholic beverage service, with the usual selection of limited snacks, but it's getting there. It's making progress.
Yeah, well, that's an improvement. Well, we were talking before we hit record, now that you're out and about and you're certainly interacting with more people, for me, things have always been dominantly virtual. So my face-to-face interactions have increased, and that really is just because I choose it. So if I choose to go and spend a morning at City Hall, with city leaders, it's just kind of nice to do every now and again, but it really hasn't changed so much my interaction. So the scope and the scale of what you're hearing and the concerns, and I mean, where are the pressure points? What are people fretting over?
They're fretting over reentry. Some are at various stages of it. So a company I was at today, everyone's all back. They're all working in the office and all of that. Other companies, they're still remote. Others have it more of a hybrid model because people have wanted to come back. They've really felt that isolation and really feel like they want to at least have a place to go at least a few days a week where they can get out of the office. And, if you're, a small apartment living by yourself somewhere with crappy internet, you're pretty much, I'll take a little commute and at least feel like I can get out and about and have it be a little more normal. So it's not it's not the same for everyone by any stretch. I mean, that's the challenging piece of it. And I will say that this is where watching people work together in groups is really helpful, because they really can bounce ideas off one another in real time. And this is this will be there'll be hundreds of case studies written about this somewhere down the future, but we're living it now. And in order to get real time, I think input from people about what they're doing and how they're doing, and for them to share their experiences. This is where I'm definitely seeing the groups be most helpful. Let's face it, I think it's like anything, but during times of difficulty or crisis or something, this is where we need one another more. And I do think people leaned into their groups. Anyone that could, unless your business was completely threatened to go out of business, or you end up not being able to survive this. I think most, CEOs or key executives, stayed with their group and really depended on and leaned into their group to help them get through what they were doing. And I think a lot of them are grateful for that. I go into meetings all the time where people are kind of reflecting on what that looks like, reflecting on what the group meant to them, reflecting on how their team responded. At the same time, they were facing enormous personal challenges, how they were able to, keep things moving forward and going on there. So everyone's just in a weirdly different spot. One of the issues that comes up is vaccination, right? What's our vaccination policy when it comes to people coming back to the office? Rutgers University, who, as you know, I'm an adjunct for them, and I don't teach on campus primarily. I will probably go in the fall, and because I teach a residency a couple times a year there, but this will probably be the first time I'll be back there in a while and do the residency. But the only way I'm going to be allowed back is because I was vaccinated. Rutgers was the first university in the country to basically say, you want to come back to school in person come September, then you're going to be vaccinated. And people were like, well, what if, I don't want to get vaccinated? And it's like, well, you can go to school somewhere else, is pretty much But, New Jersey got really impacted in a big way. And I think there's a lot of real caution around this about making sure they keep people safe and that they can get people back to school, in an in-person environment, who, are choosing to do that. So, there's just a lot of struggle there. So for companies, for example, it's like, okay, do we have a vaccination policy? Do we not? What does that look like? I think there's a lot of people that really fear as the job market is wide open right now. They feel like there's going to be a lot of movement. Nobody wants to lose their good people. We've mentioned this before. You want to be the person at this end of it now who treated their people really well during COVID, because if you didn't, you're going to find yourself on the wrong end of that, scenario going forward.
The CEOs that in these groups, and of course, I don't know, is anything more galvanizing than being in a foxhole, with other people, so these CEO peer groups that you so regularly address. I mean, I can certainly see that. I mean, coming out of it, I would surmise that they're going to have a bond. They're going to have a unique bond that the pandemic provided, for all of them.
There were some groups and plenty of them that were actually formed during the COVID period. I think Vistage launched like 52 new groups last year during COVID. I mean, think about that, right? Yeah. So it was the idea of people recognizing that they're better off as part of a group than being stuck out there alone. And I think when you looked at everything from various government programs to PPP loans to all kinds of things that were available, people needed a lot of guidance about how to, get their way through the system and how to make sure that they were understanding whatever was being put out there to help them and to be able to maximize that. And, to be able to do that together and to have someone in the group who may be just better equipped to be on top of that and could share that, excuse me, with their fellow members. It was enormous benefit. So yeah, and I think for those groups also, what tended to happen there was the groups didn't just meet like the typical once a month full day, take that retreat. That the idea of the all day meeting is that you try to clear the decks, and mentally, physically, and everything, so you can take a day where you can do a full immersion with a CEO group to really not just work in your business, right, but do this idea of working on your business and to do that with peers. And that was taken away a little bit for a while by the necessity of needing to meet more frequently for less time and help each other with the immediate fire, right? It's great to work on strategy, but if my kitchen is burning, I need to go to attend to that, So I think this was what, a lot of people did, and they did it for one another, and they got to know each other better, more quickly, and it brought the group together. I've had certain people will say, well, we're a little behind. We don't have kind of this process quite down, or this way of, working through issues quite perfect yet. And I'm like, yeah, but your group is so ahead of the game because of the bonds they formed so much more quickly and more deeply in this short period of time, where everyone helped each other through the storm, if you will, right? So I think there's a certain advantage to, especially new groups starting when they did, at least from the perspective of bonding with one another. I think that has been absolutely evident. And I think for those groups that have been around a long time, for them, it's not even that far away when you think about the 2008 financial crisis. I mean, it probably seems like forever ago, but they recognized back then that that's when you need each other most, is when times are toughest. And they not only helped each other prepare more effectively for that storm that hit, because there were certain, obviously, early indicators in the economy where people who, because they represent various, industries in different parts of the economic, web here, they just were able to keep one another apprised of what's going on, see the early warning signs, move forward with that. As we've said many times, we can complain about Zoom and the various tools, but back in 2008, we're lucky that it wasn't a pandemic, because we didn't have Zoom or Slack or Microsoft Teams. We had none of that. People would have been dialing in on conference calls until their ears bled. It just would have been ridiculous. So, I'd like to think that as we reflect on a lot of this stuff, and I think people are, first of all, they're reflecting and thinking about what went well, what do we be grateful for, what are some of the values, and what are some of the things that people exhibited that we want to make sure live on, past COVID. But then it's how do we now organize/reorganize in a way that keeps us really productive, has our employees really happy. Edelman just did a mid-year trust barometer kind of update, and there was a lot there talking about just the value of the employees. Now, it may seem obvious, but when you start comparing it to customers and investors and other major stakeholders there, the employees weren't always first on everyone's list. And now they're so recognized as being essential to what makes a company a good investment, what makes it valuable to customers, and obviously what makes it important as far as people in a place to work. So I think there's a lot of kind of regrouping going on right now, maybe taking some good of what happened during COVID, when, as we've talked about many times, so many more CEOs were asking, how are you doing? Not just what are you doing? And how do we keep that going? How do we do a really good job, and maybe a better job, treating each other as fellow human beings as opposed to as just colleagues,
Yeah. Well, and the technology has just broken down. There's no geographical barrier anymore. So if you're looking for, here in Dallas-Fort Worth, so if you're looking for high talent in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, and the work, if it can be done remotely, you're not limited to people who just live here in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. They could be anywhere. So the talent pool is greater. And I'm encountering a number of business people who are thankful that the talent pool can be broadened because, well, I mean, I'm 64, but I've heard all my life, every year, how there's a talent shortage. There's a talent shortage. I mean, there's always a talent shortage. There's always been, or a perceived talent shortage, real or imagined, and so now I think whether it's a hybrid model or whether it's going all remote, and the number of, I don't know, just anecdotally in the number of articles and things that I see online of CEOs and entrepreneurs who have figured out now, you know what, I'm spending $400,000 a year in my lease.
Yeah.
I'd rather give that to humans. I'd rather up the talent pool and pay that money to a person, as opposed to a landlord. There's something to that for some people where that fits their business model.
I think that's totally right. It shines a light on people, are not only going to be competing with AI, but they're compete with other people all over the world in a way that is going to be upped again and then some, right? And kind of shines a light on for anybody who's didn't really get too concerned over the fact that we're in the maybe high 20s, low 30s on PISA scores, in terms of secondary education in this country, and how we're just getting lit up by dozens of other countries around the world. We need to get on that in a hurry. We just flat out do. We can no longer, this is truly getting to become a world stage right now, in ways that are going to be far more evident to us. And yeah, it's just, it's.
Well, I want to pivot back around to that because you've got this enormous opportunity that's happening for you and for Peer Innovation in China. But before we get to that, I got to ask you before I forget, because you're the resident golfer here. So I'm watching the PGA Championship, right? Of course, I even non-golfers like me are watching because of Phil Mickelson. But the crowd, that crowd situation at that last hole, the pent up emotions of that crowd, I can't imagine that we would have seen anything like that pre-pandemic. It just wasn't how right. It just wasn't how golf crowds behaved, but it was as a spectator, I'm like, man, they're out of control. Had to be scary for the golfers. And
there was a whole confluence of circumstances around that truly created something that was just frenzied. I mean, it really was. Yeah. It was.
What were you thinking?
No, I think that very thing. I think there's a lot of pent up, I'll be in Boston in June, and I'm finally going to get back to Fenway Park after not being there in a while. And the good news is, as of Memorial Day weekend, it's going to be full house there now. It's not going to be like whatever percent capacity or anything, because who wants to go do that, Yeah. But to be there and get the full experience of it, that's going to be really cool. And we're going to start getting a lot more of that, the most shared experiences. You're looking at movie theaters opening up around the country, and people just excited to get out and do that. They've been like,
cabin fever is over.
Yeah, stir crazy doesn't begin to touch it. When you mentioned though about the China thing, and I know where you're going on that one, but you also said about how things have gotten smaller and so much it takes the geography out of it. It's the meeting days where I had 3 workshops in a row, right? I did the Toledo, Ohio in the morning, did Canada in the afternoon, and did Australia at night.
Right.
I mean, who does that in a normal? I mean, it was just an amazing. I referred to it as kind of a little time zone hopscotch. It was already the following day in Australia when I was doing that evening program, or the day that I had that party, if you will. It was kind of it was basically an event in Guangzhou for young entrepreneurs that were looking at peer innovation and had some real curiosity about that. It was kind of a little, launch event. And So I joined that event at 10:45 p.m. Pacific time. Just made some opening welcome remarks, that kind of a thing, and said hi to everyone, and that was that. But at 5:30 in the morning earlier that same day, that's where I was on the Aji Karamitos's podcast out of the UK. Who, as I mentioned, he was out of the UK. He speaks. I think he's lived in Italy, but I don't think he's Italian. And I think it's I don't want. I'm not going to guess his nationality, but it was so funny because he would, when he pronounced my name, I told you it was Leo Bottari, and I'm like, you pronounce it better than I do. I said, I love it.
Yeah.
I said,
Yeah, we're going to stick with that.
I'm going to stick with that. No, but I mean, and it is kind of exciting and really cool when, whether it's me or anyone, when your work can really get exposed to a much more global audience, that makes it really kind of fun.
Oh yeah. No, it's awesome. It's awesome. Culturally, I'm surmising. So based on your experience, educate me. I mean, we're still people. The language is different. Cultural customs, mores, all that stuff I get are different. But still, it's about human connection, and it still is about, I would think, it still is about human collaboration and this shared experience and the insights and things that we can gain from one another. I don't care if you're in China. I don't care if you're in North America. I don't care where you are. I mean, am I wrong?
No, I mean, you have some cultures. I mean, clearly the US is much more of an individualist culture than China would be, much more collectivist. At the same time, to your point about us all being human, some of us are either going to be wired to be really open and vulnerable and share with people, and some of us aren't. Yeah. Period. You know, right. There's no getting around that. I think you have to just be in a situation, in a group of people, in a, for lack of a better word, kind of a controlled environment where you're feeling like, okay, we're in this bubble. It's safe here. We can truly be open and recognize that we're not the only one in the room that has questions or issues or problems or challenges or opportunities in front of us. And, you know, what we can do for and with one another is really remarkable. And once people kind of get a window into that and discover it, you know, it's really special and really neat. It's been interesting to watch since The Power of Peers was written in 2016. And, you know, I think a lot has come, and I'm not attributing it to that book by any means at all. I think there's a lot of things going on in the world that have contributed to the fact that there are more people starting peer groups today. Some people are, you know, kind of almost in the following Bill George and True North groups, just starting their own groups, or there's companies springing up all over the place, particularly when it comes to entrepreneurial companies, you know, startups, things like that, where people recognize there's a lot of decisions and a lot of things to be done here. And I'd really like to make as few mistakes possible. And, you know, I at least want to be surrounded by some people we can kind of guide each other and help each other as we're all, you know, going through what we're going through. And so I think slowly but surely we're getting better and better at that, despite political divisiveness, despite a lot of other things, you know.
With your work in I mean, even if you just look at your work with Canada and here in the States, I mean, just those two cultural differences. In any other commentary that you want to make, I'm curious about the quest for safety, the quest for psychological safety. I would surmise that one of the big differences, because of the cultural differences, might be in how we go about trying to establish that. And I could see that might be, well, it would seem to me that might be more difficult in a place like China than it would in a society as open as ours.
Mm. So the big thing that I've seen between groups in Canada, CEO groups in Canada, for example, and CEO groups in the US, and it's subtle, I don't want to overstate this too much, but when you look at, there are basically three things that make a group really work and have the right people, right? One is you have to have a shared common purpose for why you're there. Both are important to both. The second is you have to have shared values and behaviors and traits that will make you a good contributing member to the group. And the third is really you want the diversity in the group of whatever diversity you can create, so you have all the voices around the table that will help you drive a valuable experience. US groups, I would say, on average and slightly, lean toward the diversity part as being really important, where a lot of the groups in Canada lean more toward the shared values piece. Their feeling on that is that you have to have the shared values part, because you can bring someone from another industry sector, another practice area, another, whatever, way the diversity cuts, right? But if they don't have the shared values piece, if they can't be a good contributing member, then it's just never going to work out. And I think they're right. I think that is truly fair. And like I said, I think there's a bent slightly on one side to the other for US versus Canada groups, but they both recognize that both are important. I think with regard to psychological safety, I think both groups, everybody's trying. Everyone's trying the best. Everyone knows that, like I said, when I've used the metaphor about the pool of water at the spa, everyone knows that if they were full into it, it would be the most incredible experience in the whole world. They just aren't always willing. They just will sit next to it and read a magazine or dangle their feet in the water, But to get people to truly let go and to truly allow them to receive what's available to them, so that they can be open to listening, and they can be more curious and ask better questions and learn more about themselves and others. It just takes time. It just takes time.
Have you sensed any shift because of the pandemic and because of the kind of the pent up siloing that might have been necessary during a pandemic, that now that we're emerging from it, are you sensing that CEOs in particular might be even more open, to diversity, or might be more open to, for lack of a better word, might be more open to the input and the experiences of somebody completely outside their realm?
Oh, I think they are. First of all, this is really funny. The call that was coming in from Italy, I have no clue who that would be, but here we are.
We should have had them pronounce your name, though.
This is this world that we're living.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. Ask the question.
Well, of the siloing that happened during the pandemic.
Oh, the diversity piece.
Yeah. The emerging from that. Is there a pent up demand for people to not be quite as siloed? Because, well, we know what that felt like, and that didn't feel too good.
Yeah, there's a diversity piece and the siloed piece. The diversity piece is, yes, we need a lot more voices at the table, but the inclusion piece and actually even taking it a step further and creating a sense of belonging, I think is very top of mind with people, and the necessity of leveraging that really becomes important. When it comes to silos, I think there could not be a better time to work on your cross-functional work team. I realize that's out of self-interest, maybe from my standpoint, but the bottom line is that if you could take what peer advisory groups do so well and apply it to your cross-functional work team and actually get them functioning at least as well as your average CEO peer advisory group does, it would be leaps and bounds over anything that cross-functional work team is doing together right now. It would help break down those silos. It would build, a spirit of cooperation and collaboration that would transcend these territorial battles that people have over people, budgets, and pet projects within their particular departments. And people would have a lens into what's going on in the organization, so that when it came to making certain decisions, you'd have the right people involved from the beginning, so that you wouldn't have something that happened in one department, find out it adversely affected somewhere else. And by the way, those things aren't always in real time. That could be something I do today that we don't see for 6 months, and then now no one even knows where to attribute it. They're not even following it. So, I think both of those things are hugely important. And it is amazing to me the number of companies that absolutely admit about how siloed they are, and talk about being able to make a difference. And if you could remove that, what a difference, right? I mean,
Well,
just
the
think about
mark,
standing in really tall grass and not being able to see over the
yeah,
top, how that would
right,
feel. That's how people are operating in their
yeah,
jobs, you
yeah.
know?
Well, and the market and the economy are going to kind of force our hand. Those of us that may be tempted to remain siloed or survive in organizations where that's their department. I mean, that seems to me to be quickly, it's by necessity having to go away for the simple reason that we talked about earlier, talent. I mean, the talent pool. I don't know, the high achievers that I know, they really don't want to operate that way. They really don't enjoy operating that way. They want their voice heard, and especially some of the up and comers, the younger folks who want to have a voice at the table, also have a degree of, I don't know, a sense about them that, well, if I want that, then I need to give way, because I know my counterparts, they also want the same thing. So we kind of have to have a tolerance for one another.
You know, I think that this tight labor market thing, so for the lack of, I think, I think it's overplayed. And I really do. And I know a lot of people get upset to hear that. But I think the reality is that there are some professions, there are some trades, there are some skills that are that we don't have enough people for. And I get that. But short of that, take 90 some odd percent of all the other jobs out there, and we lack the imagination and a decent system to match people with open positions. We just do. I mean, we have this ridiculous system that is designed largely to weed people out, and that's what we do. And we cast really great people aside for jobs, and then we complain that we can't find the right person for the position because what they're looking for and how they're looking for it is completely ridiculous in so many respects in terms of finding people that would have the skills and the will and the passion and everything else to be really successful at your organization. I mean, think about the people that are just aren't even considered. We've talked about this, whether it's women have left the workforce that are trying to get back to work, whether it's older people, whether it's I mean, you name it. I mean, there's so many
It's
military personnel. I mean, people that find it difficult to get jobs because they're not even part of that pool. And I think if people got a lot better about considering that there's some amazing people out there who are willing and wanting to work, who absolutely have the skills. And by the way, and there's a lot of jobs out there that what's really important is these people have the things you can't teach people, other stuff you can learn, but the things that, some other folks have, you can't teach that. And there are no degrees on, and there's no integrity degree. There's no, I mean, it's just.
Yeah, but people, a lot of people are largely hiring. They're hiring for that. They're hiring for that knowledge. They're hiring for some technical prowess. They're hiring for the thing that can be taught, as opposed to the things that are learned because people have had some experiences.
Right. No. I submit to that. I mean, I get that there are certain fields, in engineering and technology and all, where we literally lack the number of people to fill open positions. I don't think that's most.
No, I don't either.
Problem.
I agree with you.
But anyway,
well, it's a new day. So
it's a new day. And by the way, so that they don't have to, listen to us do the show about nothing, which we decided we would do. It's like a Seinfeld episode for us. But think about Tina Martini. Think about Eddie Turner. Think about the fact that we got Chris and Peter, guys that I'm working with in China, who are, amazing, and they're both going to be on the show. And we've just got some really good shows coming up, talking about some really great topics.
And we'll find out their real first names, which is not Chris and Peter, probably.
Well, maybe that. But but think about, we've got just just some good topics when you think about what, Tina, Eddie, and
Yeah.
Chris Peter can talk
Well,
about.
and you talk about a diversity of people.
There you go.
We are intentionally, to our audience, we are intentionally trying to bring voices from a lot of different areas of the world, geographically and otherwise, which is really enlightening for me, for a guy stuck largely doing Zoom meetings in Dallas, Texas. So
the Texas, California thing, we need to branch out, so it's good.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we appreciate the audience for hanging with us. The website is peernovation.co. You can also go to Leo Bottari. That's LeoBottary.com. I can't say it with an Italian accent. I could, but it would sound Italian with a Texas drawl, so that won't work.
Yeah.
So I won't even try.
That'd be Southern Italy. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be Southern Italy. That's exactly right. We appreciate you listening. We hope you're a subscriber. If you're not, well, what's your problem? Get with the program. And we really hope that you'll tell a friend. So I'll give you the last word, Leo.
Hey, just everybody continue to stay safe. We're kind of riding out the rest of this. It'll be wonderful just to see more of you soon in person, and just be well, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us. To subscribe to the podcast and learn more about how you can engage Peernovation for your organization, contact us on the website at peernovation.co. Till next week, remember, the power of we begins with you.